Hey, everybody, and welcome into an emergency edition of Inside Pitch here at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. I'm Ben Frederickson, joined alongside by Derrick Goold, here to talk the big news in Cardinals baseball. Derrick, the Cardinals in a surprise move fire manager Mike Shildt, and they're on the hunt for a new manager. We're going to get into some candidates of who could fit what the Cardinals are looking for here. But first, your thoughts on Mike Shildt. You and I were both in LA. We leave fully expecting Shildt to be back next year, perhaps even with an extension, and that was the Cardinals' plan. Something clearly changed as the topic turned from 2021 to 2022. What do you make of this as the dust starts to settle a little bit?
I think it was sudden. It caught everybody, a lot of folks off guard. Certainly there were a few people in the know that maybe saw this spiraling over the past week. Certainly Mozeliak did in his description, saying that it, quote unquote, came to a head over the last 5 or 6 days. This spills out of, like you said, the meetings they had Friday, face-to-face meetings, in-person meetings, to kind of chart the direction forward from 2021, and a team that needed a 17-game winning streak to get into the postseason, but did qualify for the postseason for a third consecutive year, which had not been the case for the 3 previous years, and then got there by some of the bedrocks that Shildt brought to this team. You think about how radically different and radically improved the fundamentals and the defense were from when he took over, to, just sort of the cohesion that players and coaches all described that allowed to come together for that September surge. So it clearly seems to be that it was their view of the future together and not their view of how they both contributed to the past that led to what DeWitt put succinctly as all. Chairman Bill DeWitt said, this is a difference of opinion between Mo and his group and the manager. And I believe the phrase that Mozeliak said is he wanted downstairs to get, quote unquote, on the same page. It would not surprise me at all if that was not the first time that he said that. It's just the first public time he said that.
You nailed the quote from Bill DeWitt, and that was about the only thing that made real sense in a confusing Zoom press conference that revolved around us asking repeatedly about what philosophical differences mean and how a team could develop them with a manager who started as a scout almost 2 decades ago, climbed every rung of the system, brought what we kind of think to be Cardinals baseball back to the team when he inherited a sloppy fundamental team, solid defense, good base running, and the exact success the Cardinals pride themselves on these days, winning records, making the postseason. Would have liked to see that postseason record be a bit better, but clearly the Cardinals saying this was not an on the field issue. It was more of a difference of opinions and really a clash between the front office and the manager that developed over time. So looking forward, Derrick, and we'll see if Mike Shildt wants to clear up his side of things. He has not talked yet. He sounds like he will potentially soon. We'll see what he says. He's going to be looking for a new job, so those comments could be limited. You don't exactly want to come out swinging against your former front office if you're looking to get hired by a new one, perhaps. But as with what we know, and a desire to get on the same page, we know baseball is increasingly moving toward managers who really are just an extension of the front office, guys who don't lobby for outside additions, guys who don't, campaign for roster improvement, but take what they have and work with it as such. What should the Cardinals be looking for? It sure sounded like Mozeliak has some internal candidates. I think that list starts with Oliver Marmol and Stubby Clapp. Could the Cardinals go beyond that? Should they look outside? They rarely do that, but now might be the time to maybe see what else is out there. But if they only want somebody who agrees with the front office, maybe they don't go that route.
Well, the other part of that too is they expect the coaching staff to return. So if you brought somebody in from the outside, you would be saying, here's the group that you're to work with, which is a little bit of an interesting approach, because then essentially you would be saying, look, we're going to give you a chance to manage, but it's on our terms. And we don't think enough of you as a manager to allow you to bring somebody you trust along. You have to create that on the go. And that's a really charged word that I used there, is trust. I mean, but when you hire somebody, you do want to at least give them an ally, it would seem, someone who they've worked closely with, or someone they could turn to, or someone who they know can challenge them and not be at risk of, like somebody who they can trust to keep them honest. Here's a case where it would be, if the Cardinals have their way, and we'll see how this plays out. And next week will be a good clue on that, is how many coaches come back. But it's a bit of a jiffy pop, instant ready coaching staff. That does hint at the fact that they would want to keep it at least, linear. Some kind of momentum going from this past season. I think it's a real interesting and almost even delicate choice that they've made here, because it takes all of the good tidings and all of the good vibe that came from 17-game winning streak, re-signing Molina, re-signing Wainwright, having Arenado say he's not going to opt out. It was like the band was sticking together for one raucous tour in 2022. A lot of optimism. And now they're going to have to hire a manager who can stitch some of that back together, while also dealing with the fact that the clubhouse will look through the lens of him just being an extension of the front office.
Right. Do you want a manager who is independent of the front office, or do you want one who's almost indentured to the front office? And I think we're seeing which way the Cardinals are leaning here. And it's funny because we saw Shildt kind of grow a little bit more independent. When he first got the job, we heard a lot about that's above my pay grade, or that's the front office decision. And as he got into the job, he won manager of the year. He had the best winning percentage of any active manager who had as many seasons under their belt, except for Aaron Boone and Dave Roberts, who have pretty good rosters annually. I think that's fair to say. And we saw Shildt kind of gain some of that leverage, or at least think he did. And it backfired on him, it seems like, in the end. His clash with Jeff Albert, which Mozeliak acknowledged was some of the issue here. He didn't say it was all of it, but he said there was some friction there. So the next manager, does he enter with autonomy, or does he enter with kind of this role of this, you're in charge of the roster in the lineup perhaps, and nothing else, don't look beyond that. So curious to see who they take a swing at. There are some other names out there, and look, this is the Cardinals. There's always going to be a great list of candidates who are interested in the job if they don't go internal, if they don't go, Ollie Marmol or Stubby Clapp. How about Skip Shoemaker? You got Skip, who's been a player. You've got also, Carlos Beltran, and who could be looking at openings. Matt Holliday, who's kind of, suggested that maybe he should get, or could be wanting to manage in the future. Could they go kind of the Matheny route, look for a former player?
Yeah, that's something, that actually has kind of been written about, and just not in reference to the manager role, right? There's some thought that this team, the way it's currently constructed and the direction it's been going, would benefit from having a more prominent, larger voice from a former player, a player who has kind of been on the field, been in the arena. It was something that they readily acknowledged was a position they may add to the hitting, group. Was someone who had been in the box in the major leagues, who could kind of relate directly with the players. And so you see the team kicking around and thinking about the idea of adding that voice. Do they add it to what should be the loudest voice in the room, and sort of pair that with Mike Maddox, who obviously has been on the mound and knows what it's like and has a long career as a pitching coach? Or do they add two people? And this brings us back to, like, if they bring in somebody new, do they bring in a lieutenant of sorts for them to work with? Skip Schumacher has been what's called the associate manager out in San Diego. So clearly we can have some, let's say, divvying up of titles to make all this work. The idea of Schumacher, who's a rising talent, who a lot of people in the industry see as a future manager, is really intriguing. The presence of Matt Holliday in some way, whether that comes with the title of manager or some other position, that of course has some intrigue, because he has a strong connection to this organization, but also has an eagerness to kind of shape a culture as well. We know that Mozeliak is intrigued by what he could do. So I think how they go, it is a real question of whether or not they go with continuity, whether they go with a proven commodity, or whether they try to create some alloy of both from their own ability to identify talent.
That Holliday had a big role in helping Nolan Arenado fixate on the Cardinals. Perhaps could be a recruiter of Trevor Story as well. If he wants to jump back in, that wouldn't be a bad thing to mention in an interview, right? Hey, I know Story pretty well too. Just spitballing. We know one thing: whatever direction the Cardinals go for their new manager, the new manager has one rule at the top of that list, and it's stay on the right side of the front office. Because Mike Shildt would have had a hard time winning more than he did with the rosters he was handed, and now he's looking for work, whether that's San Diego or the Mets or whatever else might be out there for him, because he clashed with that front office. We'll have all of it covered at stltoday.com. Candidates, news on the managerial search, and reaction from Shildt if that comes after this surprising news. Derrick, great work. Keep it up, and we'll have it all covered at stltoday.com. For Derrick, I'm Ben. We'll talk to you next time.